Okay. Hi, and welcome to today's session in the msdynamicsworld.com Fall 2014 webcast series. I am Jason Gumbert, and joining us for today's event is a returning speaker, Noah Mosley of MSX Group. I'm guessing some of you were with us for the event last week that Noah presented on Management Reporter, and if not, we will have a recording of that posted very soon. Noah is, for those of you who don't know him, he is a Dynamics ERP financial reporting expert. He focuses on Microsoft Forecaster, Management Reporter, and FRX, and we're glad to have him back today talking about Forecaster. So as we get started, I just want to add that we do invite you to add your feedback and ask questions during Noah's presentation. You can use the Q&A block or the chat that you'll see on the right side of the webcast session. And please be aware of some new display settings that you might see in the upper right of the slide area, or where Noah's sharing his slides now. You can click on that magnifying glass with a plus to change the size of the display, in case that helps with clarity. So with that out of the way, please allow me to welcome Noah Mosley. Noah, are you there?
Thank you. I am. Good to be here, and I believe I've got the first screen of that PowerPoint shared with us there.
That's right.
Okay. So unless you have something else, Jason, I'll go ahead and jump into this.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So this session for us today is for Microsoft Forecaster. Have you outgrown budgeting in Excel? So a little bit about myself. Jason gave me a nice intro there just before this. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. My company, MSX Group, we focus on consulting services, training, and software support for Forecaster, as well as Management Reporter and FRX. So after this session, if you need assistance with your installation of Microsoft Forecaster, either installing it, setting it up, or training on how to use it, just let me know. Email is the best way to get in touch with me. After the session, Jason will be emailing out this PowerPoint slide deck, and my email is at the bottom of the slide there, noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. Just so that we're all on the same footing with what Forecaster does for us, Forecaster is a Microsoft application that Microsoft has rolled out for budgeting purposes for the Dynamics ERP solutions. You can use it with AX, GP, NAV, or SL, any of those four. You'll use Forecaster for budgeting as well as for forecasting and planning. And you can use that for like a one-time-a-year deal to get all 12 months of your budget done. You can go back there each month and update those, or each quarter, as often as you need to update those balances. Everything you store inside Forecaster is stored in a SQL database. So great central location for your budget, forecast, and plan balances. So it's easy to pull those back from that database. And even though it is not Excel, it is a separate application all by itself. But when your users log into Forecaster, it's spreadsheet style layout, so they'll be very comfortable with that layout as far as putting in data and saving the results. Most of my clients that I have for Forecaster have been using Excel for budgeting for years. So that's the majority of everybody I go to for a new Forecaster install. And Excel is great for budgeting. It's very flexible, very dynamic, easy to get around in, put in formulas and store balances, pull those files back up. But after a while, after your company and your budgeting requirements get to a certain level, you'll probably outgrow Excel for budgeting. At that point where you have like tons of Excel files that you have to create templates in Excel, multiple templates, and then you have to email those out to your budget managers. You have to wait for those managers to do their budgets in those separate Excel files and email those back to you. That's a hassle waiting for that, because you don't really know if they've opened it yet, if they've started working in it at all, until you get that file back in an email. Consolidation of those Excel files, once you do get them all back, is a lot of work. You've got to wait for all the budget managers to email it back to you, take each one of those, consolidate those back into a single file for a consolidated budget. That can be a real hassle, especially if you don't have things really locked down where they can't add columns or rows and stuff like that to throw off calculations. And once you do have all that consolidated budget back into a single Excel file, there is the question about comparing that to actuals. So you have to get the actuals into Excel or your Excel stuff back into your GL somehow to get those comparisons. All those things you can do a lot easier inside Forecaster. The benefits of Forecaster: spreadsheet style user interface. Your budget managers log into Forecaster. They pull up their input screens. It's columns and rows just like Excel. You control how those input screens look, what account numbers are showing up, what columns show up, what calculations, the color, the fonts, the shading. Everything is locked down with security and workflow inside Forecaster. So every budget manager you have will have a user ID to log into Forecaster and do their budget. And when they log in, they only see their departments and their accounts for budgeting. So you control all that with security inside Forecaster. And you can even use their Windows accounts on your network as their Forecaster login, so they don't have to have an extra login to get into the budget system. Workflow is built into Forecaster so that all your budget managers, as they go through the budget, they can save it as often as they need to. They might put in some numbers today, save it, but need to come back Monday and make some changes to those. So at that point, every time they save it, you see the data automatically. So on that SQL database, everybody shares. The workflow, though, lets them, when they are completely finished with their input, they can go to workflow and submit it for review. And that locks it down for input and sends an email to the next person in the review process, letting them know that it's ready for review. And you, as an administrator, can go to one page inside Forecaster, pull up the status on every department you've got in the budget cycle, and see everybody's status. Is it in progress? Has it been submitted? Has it been approved or rejected, or is it all the way to completion? So easy one page to review everybody's status. The point here about instant consolidation for reporting inside Forecaster: as soon as any of your budget managers click the save icon on their input screens, those balances are stored in Forecaster's SQL database, and there are roll-up or reporting tree definitions that roll up all those balances automatically. So as soon as they click save, you could run a report for the entire company and see the budget just as they just saved it. So there's no need for getting Excel files and combining those together into one file for consolidation. It's all done as soon as they click that save icon on input. There are detailed budgeting templates inside Forecaster that you can use. These are optional, but they do come in very handy. You've got detailed budgeting for capital, revenue, and HR, payroll. The capital will let your budget managers budget for any new assets that they want to purchase for the next year. They'll also calculate depreciation expense for those assets. Revenue will let you break down the revenue details, cost of goods sold for the budget coming up. And HR and payroll, that'll let you bring in your existing employees, budget their wages for next year, as well as any additions to your work, your employees, or reductions. And HR lets you calculate wages, taxes, and benefits for all the existing and new employees. Forecaster is a desktop installed application. Alternatively, your budget managers might not have the desktop install of Forecaster. They might use web access. They just pull up Internet Explorer, log into Forecaster's website, type in their budgets, and save it, all using Internet Explorer, so they don't have to have extra installation work on their desktops. So several great features there for inside Forecaster. You get the desktop installation for Forecaster that goes in. You also have WebEx, as I just mentioned. There is an Excel add-in, so if you do have some needs where you need to pull data from Forecaster into an Excel spreadsheet or push data from Excel back into Forecaster SQL database, that works fine for us. Everything is stored in a single SQL database of Forecaster, and it's all tied to Windows or SQL authentication. And when you set up Forecaster, you typically you'll start off by copying your chart of accounts from your ERP solution. That way, every balance that your budget managers store on an input screen, they're tied to an account number, which is what your GL would use, as well as any other dimensions like departments or division codes, anything you actually use for your actuals in the GL. I'm going to switch over to Forecaster now, give you a tour inside Forecaster. As I go through this, Jason will help me watch the chat box when we have questions that come in, or we can take questions at the end as well. So I've already got on my screen Forecaster open. This is the desktop installation of Forecaster. Although if you go to the web access for Forecaster, it looks very similar. So your budget managers, if they open up an input screen in the desktop here or web access, they're going to look almost identical. So let's look at how it's going to look for your budget managers. So when they come into Forecaster, they're going to spend most of their time in doing input. So they'll access those pages through data up top and then input. Forecaster will ask them what input set or year they want to work with. And I'm logged in as an administrator, so I can see every input set that I have ever created. When they log in, they'll only have the ones that you give them access to. So they might just have budget 2014. They might have first forecast for 2014 available. You control which ones they can see in that drop-down box. I'll log in here to that budget 2014 input screen. It pulls back the last department I was working with, which I can see that at the very top of my page. This was New York Manufacturing, Department 11010. All these balances are tied to that department. A little bit about the layout here. You've got 5 tabs across the top of this page. Multi-row is the one that we are looking at currently. That's the default input screen. So everybody that gets to the input screens will have this one, although it can look completely different as far as shading and colors and what columns are here and what rows are here. Single row is optional, as well as human resources, capital, and revenue. All those 3 are optional as well, although the majority of every client I go to, pretty much everybody uses human resources. Maybe about half will use capital and revenue. Probably more than half use capital and revenue and single row. I'll look at those 4 in just a minute, but let's look here at the multi-row input screen, which is the main one your budget manager will have. If your budget manager should not have access to HR, they won't even see this tab at the top for human resources. Same thing applies for single row, capital, and revenue. On the multi-row tab, we've defined this, so we've got January budget for 2014 through, on the right-hand side, December budget, and then an annual total on the right. When you build your input screens, you control what every column represents. Is it just going to be 12 monthly columns in the annual year to date, or do you want to mix in some actuals right beside your budget, some quarterly totals? You control what everything represents on your input screens. Same thing applies when you list out your list of accounts on the left-hand side going down the left here. You decide what account numbers are listed, how these are organized, the shading, the coloring, the fonts for every one of these, as well as for any calculations that are tied to the screen. And everything that's listed here is for New York Manufacturing. When you go to a different department, it could be the same accounts, same calculations, or it could be completely different. It just depends on what you need to set up. A lot of flexibility here. When your budget managers are doing their data input, the rows that are green here, those are locked and they have an equal sign left-hand margin. Those are calculation rows, or they're coming from one of the supporting detail pages like human resources, capital, or revenue. So I can't change the green rows here directly. I do have rows that are in white, so I can type in directly to those cells for balance changes. Anytime you change any balances here, Forecaster recalculates all the calculations on the page, just like Excel would. Updates annual total on the right-hand side. Your budget managers can type in individual balances. There's also copy and grow function, so that if they type in $100 in a month and an asterisk, when I press enter, every column to the right of this cell will have that same $100 posted. Your budget manager could also increase or decrease entries by percentages or dollar amounts. So I could put in $100 with the greater than symbol and 10 with a percent sign. So when I press enter, every column to the right increases by 10%. You can go up down by percentages or dollar amounts using the greater than or less than symbols. Formulas are fine for your budget managers. They just type in the equal sign and whatever the formula is they want to type in. I'll say 25 asterisk 4. So formulas are fine for your budget managers to enter as they go through these input screens. Another way for them to add detail to their input screens would be line item details. So for the travel account, let me scroll up a little bit. I've got a travel account here, account 3010. And instead of just typing in balances, I can see there's a plus icon on the left-hand margin. So that lets me know that someone has added supporting rows of detail to this account number. So to see that, I can double-click anywhere on this row. Double-click travel. This expands and shows me all of the individual trips that have been budgeted against this account. And these additional rows of detail, your budget managers can add as many as they need to without having to call you and say, hey, I need a new account or a new row. They just click the plus icon up top, add as many rows to that account as they need to, and it adds a new row with a default description or label, and they can type over that and change it. Let's add one for San Diego. And then the budget the individual months for the balances. All those details, when they double-click on the account row at the top, it'll collapse all that and re-summarize all the balances. So a great way for your budget managers to be able to add supporting loads of detail to that account without having to call you. And it doesn't mess up your consolidations or anything else. At the end of it, all that money is booked to the same account, 3010 for travel, that everybody else uses. Your budget managers can add additional text to their entries here so that you can have supporting detail for why they entered balances. I can see that this office supplies account has an exclamation mark on the left-hand margin. So I know that has a comment or memo tied to it. I can open that up with this icon at the top for memo. They can type in all the text that they need for that row, and then when they save it, that gets tied to this row for this department and that account. And that's available for reports. You can print those out. Anybody that has access to this department can see those notes as well. Spread methods are available inside Forecaster for spreading annual amounts back to the individual months. So if I go to the right-hand side for training and type in $12,000, when I press enter, the default spread method is to take that money and divide it evenly back across the months. But I could go up to the top and use the icon for spread methods, and you can spread that annual $12,000 back to the month based on a baseline value, which might be last year's actuals. You can spread it based on the value of some other account, like you might spread it back based on revenue. Or you can set up other spread methods, like we've set up some here for 445, seasonal or working days per month. They'll just pick what they need to divide that money back across the months, click OK, and that adjusts the monthly balances for us. It also puts an S on that left-hand margin, lets me know there's a spread method being used to spread these balances back to the months, and I can see that in the lower right-hand side of the screen it says working days. That's the spread method I used. You as administrator can set up as many different spread method options as you need to for your budget managers to use. When you define these input screens for your budget managers, you can also lock these accounts, these rows, and assign calculations. Like postage has an equal sign on it, and if I click on that postage row, the calculation, I can't change the monthly balances here. It's just a formula, and I see the formula at the bottom left. It's just $25 for my head count, FTEs, per month. So your budget managers cannot override your calculations. When you set the multi-row calculations, the rows here, the account numbers, everything is at the control of the administrator. You can set up one template, everybody uses it, or make a different one for every department. And if you roll this out and your budget managers are using it, but you decide, oh, you've left out a formula or you've left out an account number, you can go back in one time, update that definition, save it, And you don't have to email out templates, new templates to all your budget managers. Just let them know that they, the next time they log into Forecaster, they'll see that new account or the new formula or the new column that you've added. Going to look at the tab for single row next. And Jason, if anything comes in for questions, I can take those as we go through these. Single row is a input screen for us. It is one account at a time, but it does give us a quick comparison between the baseline value and our new budget numbers. Let me switch to, I think we have some numbers in freight. Yep. Our baseline balances, which could be anything, could be last year's actuals or actuals from 2 years ago or anything else. We've got our column for our input screens. So you can type in the balances here. It also tracks a dollar change between the two and a percent change between the two. So I can click to open any of these up, make any of those changes. Or on the bottom is an annual total. I can just everything by, say, $1,000.
No, we do have a question that came in.
Okay.
Someone asked, how can users create their own custom spread methods?
So back on multi-row for spread methods, in the drop-down list of spread method options, they can't add any more to this list here. Baseline and based on. Based on is the value of some other account, so that's probably their most flexibility. So, but they can't add new ones here. They'd have to say, they'd have to ask the administrator to add a new spread method option.
Okay. And I'm sorry, there's a follow-up on that if you were able to take it. For baseline, can you pull prior year actuals from GP?
Definitely. So, yeah, baseline can be actuals from GP for this department. And that's the most common thing. You use the actuals for the baseline. Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for the question.
Yep. That single row, I was looking at freight. I just changed the dollar change for the year for $1,000. You can change it for a percentage as well. So it's a quick way to update one account. It is one account at a time, but I like how it adds this dollar change and the percent change columns. This tab is optional, so you don't have to use it. But it doesn't take a lot of work to make it available for your budget managers, just in case they do want to use it. Human resources will let you budget for all of your existing employees, new hires, or reductions for next year. Every row here is an individual employee that's been added to this New York department, and you'll track all their details. What month do they plan to start working next year? Are they working the entire year? Are they just working part of the year, like January through September or February through December? You can even track their hours or FTEs per month. Going to the right, there's other details you can add, like you can track pay increases or pay changes per year, 2 of those. You can pay out bonus amounts for each employee as a fixed dollar amount or a percentage of their earnings. All the details here, when you save this detail, will calculate that employee's wages, taxes, and benefits and record those to the right accounts for this budget. And when you start this off, you'll typically get a file of all your existing employees, so it's easy to import all those employees into Forecaster as a starting point. Even if, like 600, 1,000 employees, those are easy numbers to get into Forecaster for budgeting. And you're budgeting for all your salary employees as well as for any hourly employees. Now, this tab for human resources, not every budget manager will have access to it, so not every budget manager will even see that tab. So you control the access here within the security inside Forecaster. All the balances that this screen calculates are stored back onto multi-row. Same thing for single row. All those changes go back to the multi-row tab. so that it all goes back to one location to be stored for the budget. It doesn't really matter what payroll system you have, ADP or anything else. It's just usually pretty easy to get a file exported from those systems and then import into Forecaster. Jason, anything come up in chat box for questions for payroll?
Yeah, we actually had another follow-up on the, I guess on the previous question. Ronald asks, can you show previous year actuals and budget pulled from GP, and can you show, I guess, multiple previous years?
So single row does show us the baseline column. So I've got the baseline column here, which this could be actuals from last year, or actuals from 2 years ago, or anything else from GP. On the multi-row tab, this one is set up just to have 12 monthly columns and then an annual year-to-date. But you could add additional columns here for last year's actuals by month, or just one total for last year's annual total, or include that plus 2 years back as well. So it's just a matter of updating this screen's definition. So it's easy done. You can do it for one department, or you can do it for all of them. Just to show you briefly, this icon right here takes you to the column definition for this page. You just update this with your new, just right-click and insert from segments, periods, and pick whatever year or annual totals or individual monthly totals that you want to pull into this input screen. Those actuals would have been imported from GP, so they're in Forecaster, and you would have locked them down so that you can see them on the input screen, but your budget managers can't change those actuals. And even if you forgot to lock it down inside Forecaster, and they changed actuals inside Forecaster by mistake, it doesn't, those actuals, we don't push those back into GP, so you're not changing the actuals in GP. Okay, let me close out of this column definition. I'm back to the input screen for the budget. We had just talked about the Human Resource tab. And I was going to look at the Capital tab next, unless there were some questions out there about payroll. Okay, so let me know if something comes in, Jason. I'll jump back to this one.
Okay, I don't have any other questions at this time.
Okay, the tab for capital. This, again, is an optional tab. Not everybody will have access to this even, but it does come in handy. Lets your budget managers budget for any new assets they would like to purchase for next year. Every row here is a new asset that this department, New York Manufacturing, wants to purchase for next year. They can add as many rows here as they need to. They'll just type in an ID for that new asset, the description for that new asset. They'll pick the capital type, which really controls the life of the asset and what account numbers you book the cost to and the depreciation expense. They'll tell Forecaster what period they plan to purchase the asset and what period to start depreciation expense for that asset, the individual cost of the asset, and how many they plan to purchase. So a lot fewer columns here, easy for those to put this into the budget and then calculate depreciation expense for these assets. Now this is for new assets for the new budget year, so it's not your existing assets. For your existing assets, your fixed asset system should project next year's depreciation expense, and then we import those balances into Forecaster. So this screen here is really just for new assets. The cost, the depreciation expense, all that gets calculated and books back to the multi-row tab. Although those balances don't have to display on multi-row, but it flows back that direction. On the Revenue tab for this input screen, save that, see if I can get out of this page here and go to Revenue next. This is kind of a split screen. The top half is different selections we make in the bottom half is a rate page, but let me change this. I'm still in New York manufacturing. I'm going to work in the Eastern market. And product, let me switch that from spare parts back to motors. All right, so this page here is a way for us to break down the revenue detail by products. These are two dimensions that you might not track inside your GL. This is market and this is products. You can add these two extra dimensions inside Forecaster for budgeting even if you don't have them inside the GL. And even though it says market and product, you can change that to be anything else. So it could be customers, could be consultants, anything you want these two fields to represent. Depending on which product in this field you select determines the look and the calculations for this screen. Now for motors, we've set this one up so it has a set number of account numbers on the left-hand side, and the formulas are all set to calculate the total sales and the total revenue after cost is taken out. Now you as a budget administrator would define this with any account numbers you want to and any calculations you want to for this particular product. The other product we had, switching from motors to spare parts, this one's set up a little bit differently. This is the one that we first looked at with the split screen. Top half I've got spare parts for motors and spare parts for compressors. And your budget managers in the top half here, they just enter each month the number of units that they plan to budget for. And in the bottom half of the screen, as an administrator, we've already told Forecaster that these parts, motors, or compressors have a specific rate, and the cost per rate, we've set that up as well as an administrator. So it's really just a matter of these rates being multiplied by the units the budget managers enter for the totals at the bottom for dollars. I have the revenue for spare parts in dollars and the cost in dollars. This one's looking at motors. If I look at compressors, click on that row at the bottom. These balances are all for compressors. So when you're setting up the detail screens for revenue here, you can set it up where it's just rows and calculations, or you can set it up this way where they put in units and you supply the rates. Everything you enter and save here, same as with human resources, capital, and single row, all that flows back into multi-row, the main budget. So going back to multi-row, which may be the only screen your budget managers have. You know, those other 4 tabs are optional. Multi-row is the main one, and this is where they do the majority of their work. Once your budget managers are finished with all their input for this department, they'll save it. And if they are responsible for multiple departments, they'll just click the open folder to switch to the next department they've been assigned. And that next department could have the same accounts or different accounts, same formatting, or completely different. Just depends on how you need to set it up for each one of your departments. Now, as your budget managers go through here and they save the balances, they may save it on Friday but intend to come back on Monday and make some more changes. That's fine. But when they are really finished with it, then they can go to workflow and actually submit it for review. So I'm going to close out of input here. Workflow for us is right in the middle here, workflow status. I'll switch to this window. And let's look at New York Manufacturing, that department I looked at first. The status for New York Manufacturing is in progress. Your budget manager would come here and change that status from in progress to submitted. They'll save that. That locks the input screen from input. And it also sends an email to the next person in the review process letting them know it's ready for review. And the next person, after they review it, they can either approve it or reject it. If they approve it, it stays locked, sends an email to the next person in the review process. If they reject it, it unlocks it, sends an email back to the first person. So, great way to control the flow of emails with workflow here. Also, you as an administrator can come to this very same page And instead of just pulling up one department like New York Manufacturing here, you can open up a summary or a roll-up for maybe all of the Eastern Division. You'll have a list of all the department codes and all their status. You see everybody's status as whether it's in progress, have they submitted it, has it already been reviewed and approved or rejected. And I did this just for one segment of departments, Eastern. You can pull this up for the entire company. You usually get one place to see the status of everybody's standing. Any questions come in, Jason, about workflow?
No questions right now, but please do use either the chat or the Q&A to enter your questions.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So let's say your budget managers have gone through, they've done their budget inputs for their budgets. They've submitted those in workflow. Anytime they click save on that on the input screen, all those balances get stored back in the Forecaster SQL database. And as soon as they save it, it's available for reports inside Forecaster, and it's consolidated right away based on roll-ups that you set up as an administrator. So if I go to look at setup, segments, and roll-ups inside Forecaster, I have gone through here for my departments, and I have set up several different roll-ups for my departments. If I look at functional by function, I can see I've just organized all these into roll-ups like under administration, customer service, manufacturing, marketing. You can set up as many different roll-up definitions as you need to. These roll-ups summarize all the balances as soon as your budget managers click the save icon. So you don't have to get all that data into a consolidated file and then worry about rolling it up into a consolidated total. It's all done as soon as they click save, as long as you have these roll-ups set up. And when you define your roll-ups, you can list the roll-ups by listing individual IDs from the chart of accounts, or you can define these with ranges. And if you add new departments and they fall within that range, you don't have to worry about updating your roll-ups or your tree definitions because they're in that range definition. They get picked up automatically. For the reporting inside Forecaster, I've got this icon at the top left for the selection menu. And under the selection menu, let me go back a few windows here. I've got one option for my report menu. And then in here, I've got a list of all the reports that I have access to. You decide what reports your budget manager should have access to. You can pick any of these. Let's go with this budgeted income statement. And on this next window, I can open this report for the whole company or just Eastern or just Midwestern. I'll take the top level. Forecaster goes out, pulls back all those balances that are in the Forecaster database for budget, pulls them together into a consolidated total. All that work is done every time a budget manager clicks the save icon on the input screen. So as far as an administrator, consolidation is a breeze. And when you get to these reports, there's also still drill down. So if you want to double click and drill down to any of these rows, you can double click and drill down to see exactly where all that money is posted to. Every time you double click, Forecaster opens up a new row on top of the last one. So they're all still right behind each other. And if I go to window, I can see all the screens I've drilled down through. So easy consolidation, still have drill down all the way down to the details, to the individual account level balances. And you can also drill down further. If it's HR detail, you can drill back to the individual employees that make up those balances, or individual assets if it's new assets, or the revenue details. So we looked at the input screens for Forecaster, we looked at workflow for Forecaster, and the reporting inside Forecaster. I mentioned you control security for every different area inside Forecaster. Or what departments can your budget manager see? What tabs for input can they get to? Can they see HR at all? Can they see capital at all? What reports can they get to? You control all that inside Forecaster for security. There's also other options if you need to set up allocations in Forecaster and book like a lump sum, maybe to corporate, and then have that allocate out to all your other departments automatically. You can do that with allocations, and that money can be distributed based on fixed percentages or the value of some other account like square footage or revenue. So allocations are easy to set up inside Forecaster and run. There's also stuff like adjustment wizards. So after you've gone through the budget process with all your budget managers, at the end of it, you might want to say, well, what if we increase this expense account by 10%? And we do it for the entire company. So this one window here will let you go through, select what departments you want to affect, and I'll just pick everything in the company, what account number you want to affect, and I'll just pick this labor account, and what periods you want to affect, and I'll just pick some of these individual months, maybe just June, July, and August. And you can adjust those balances up and down by amounts or by percentage. And just put in the percentage in that field above there or the dollar amount above there. Click that adjust button in the lower right, and that updates that budget for that one account for the whole company. It's very quick, easy to do analysis that way. Let me close out these windows for us. I also want to mention that once you do one budget in Forecaster, like we did last year's budget 2014, and you get ready and you want to copy it over to next year, it's a lot easier process using the copy plan wizard, so you can copy all the setup from the prior year to the new year and then update whatever you need to update. There's a wizard under Tools, Wizards, called Copy Plan Wizard, and that will let us copy data or the setup information from one budget year. I'll just go from budget 26 to budget 2007, and that can copy all of our input screen definitions. It can copy all of our formulas. It can copy all of our payroll setup information, revenue, capital detail, all that detail that we set up for the last year into the new year, and then we can go and make changes like change the tax rates. So using the wizard, easy to set up a next year or get it ready for a forecast. And this time of year is when everybody is jumping into the budget cycle, getting their screens ready to roll out. So it's not too late now if you're doing a calendar budget to get Forecaster installs up and running. You can get a good budget up and running in a week within Forecaster. More complicated budgets take longer, but 1 week is a good quick start for you. And Microsoft is very flexible with the licensing for Forecaster. You may already own it. In fact, you probably already own it and have licenses and user IDs available for Forecaster. All you need to do is get the registration keys, install it, and start setting it up to roll it out to your budget managers. So Jason, we are rolling up on the last 15 minutes of the session. I was going to open it up for any questions that anybody had for us. They can put those in the chat box there, or I don't know if you want to bring them on audio as well.
We don't usually put people on audio. We could test it out, but yeah, I want to just remind people they can enter their questions here. We'll make this maybe a last call as we start wrapping up. Here's a question: if we have GP 2013, how much would, I guess the question is, how much would Forecaster cost?
Well, if you have GP 2013, I think you would probably already own it, and you may have unlimited licenses already.
All right, so potentially some good news.
If you have access to your registration keys, they're going to be listed in that list of all your registration keys. You'll see Forecaster 7.0 and a key and the number of users. If you do own that with the number of users, it's just a matter of installing it and setting it up. And if you need assistance with the setup, that's, a week is a good quick start for a budget cycle for Forecaster. That's what we come in. We've been doing these. I did my first Forecaster deal back in 2001, So ever since then, it's been pretty much a wide array of industries, every size company, a lot of experience getting Forecaster up and running.
All right, and I do recommend, sending Noah an email if you have questions after today's event. Here's a question from Ronald. What is the long-range plan for Forecaster? Hearing rumors that Microsoft may merge it into Management Reporter.
So Microsoft has not announced they are looking at other options for Forecaster for budgeting. They have put Forecaster into a maintenance mode, so they are not going to continue development of Forecaster. They're looking at replacing it with other options, but they haven't really announced what's going to be the replacement for Forecaster. AEX has a budgeting solution that may be the replacement for Forecaster, although it's got a little ways to go before that one can roll out to the public. For GP and the other ERP solutions, they have not announced replacement. In years past, they had talked about putting it inside Management Reporter. I think that they've probably been so swamped with getting Management Reporter rolled out for financial reporting, they haven't had time to pursue that any further. So right now, Forecaster is in a maintenance mode, up and running. They're still selling Forecaster. It still works well for the dynamic solutions. And Jason, while you're looking at see if any other questions come in, I want to mention the slide I have on the screen here as kind of a closeout as well. If you need assistance going forward, or maybe you already have Forecaster and you're still need questions about using it, our website has information for you on msxgroup.com. We've got our forums and message boards up there. You're welcome to join that and contribute to the conversation. On there, you'll also have training classes that we list up there, as well as webinars we do each month. We offer consulting services. Email is the best way to get back in touch with me if you need me after this session. Got my email in the middle of the page there, noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. And I mentioned our spring forums, which is at FFMR 2014. We had that back in April. We do those once a year. And so we'll aim again for April of this coming 2015. So we'll have a whole day dedicated to Forecaster. In the morning, we'll start out with the beginner sessions for Forecaster, and then we'll go to intermediate sessions, and then have the advanced sessions in the afternoon. So a whole day of free online training for Microsoft Forecaster. That's in April of this coming year. We also do, in that same week, we'll do a whole day for Management Reporter as well. And I don't have it on here, but every year you'll probably see me at Convergence and at Summit. So October, I'll be in St. Louis for Summit. I know Jason will be there. I'm not sure if anybody else from you guys will be or not, but if you are in St. Louis, I'll have a booth on the expo hall, and I'll be teaching Management Reporter and Forecaster classes on Monday or Tuesday of that week. So if you're out there, look me up and say hello.
All right. Well, that appears to be the end of the questions. Noah, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to be here.
For everyone on the phone, we are recording today's session. We'll make it available quite soon. Just as a note, we also have the Management Reporter session, which actually just came online from on-demand viewing from last week. I'm actually just going to paste it in here for anyone who's online, so you can check that out. Thanks again, and have a great day.